Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. Coach, this just popped in my head, and because you mentioned playing 6'4" power forwards, Andre Emmett's name just came up, and I've never been able to ask you or anybody about. Actually, that's not true. I did record a talk with Ronald Ross, and we talked about Andre a little bit, and so. But I would love to ask you, what was the shift? What was the change that he made that you guys were able to make with him? Because me and Andre were the same year. In our freshman year, I actually played a little bit more than he did, under Coach Dickey. And then you guys came in, and it was a change where all of a sudden, this dude's one of the best players in America. I knew him in high school. How did that happen?
Well, they ran all these sets, and so they had him trying to make him a perimeter player. And Andre, God rest his soul, great kid. He just couldn't shoot.
No.
He couldn't shoot outside of 10 feet.
15 feet and in, pretty darn good.
The beauty of the motion offense, it kept him around his comfort level in 10 feet, 15 feet on in. And he just, right away. I remember our first practice. We got him the motion offense, and he's setting down screens and popping back, and he's right there in his comfort zone. He could either shoot a floater there or one dribble, get to the basket. And then we had entries that we put him in, and it just kept him in his strengths. And that was a good thing about the motion offense. We could play him at we didn't get into numbers, but if there were numbers, he would have been a 4 and sometimes a 5. But it kept him around the basket, and that was his comfort. And that's why he's able to lead the Big 12 in scoring. But where's it hurt him, though? Going to the next level, because everyone's set. And it'd be a little different nowadays. But it's still, you got to be a certain size. The 3, the 4, the 5. And with his size, he should have been a shooting guard.
Yeah, and his inability to shoot would definitely make spacing difficult, because that seems to me what the NBA is all about, putting those deadly shooters in the right space to create gaps. But anyway.
Exactly. But we just saw, or my dad saw, how good he was around the bucket, and we'd run our offense, and it kept him. And, and my dad was great. Like, Andre, you're not a three-point shooter. If you prove it, do it. But it's not about shooting the three, it's about scoring. Yep. And there was nobody better. I'm thinking, even to the IU guys growing up, just around that bucket, because he phenomenal leaper and so quick with the ball, and he could spin and just everything around the bucket. And then he was an unbelievable rebounder because he's such a good athlete, and it kept him around the bucket instead of out there on the perimeter like he was his freshman year. And so really, my dad was the best thing to happen to him from a standpoint, because any other coach has him, they're still going to try and make him that 2 guard.
Yep.
Instead of, hey, you're just a player. Play to your strengths, score around the bucket.
Yeah, you're right on the money with that. What about Andre fitting in with you and Coach? Because coming from Indiana maybe type players, you talked about the high academic, the high guys, that with discipline. I knew Andre back in the day. But he did seem to love it, and you guys just worked together so well. It just always was such an interesting dynamic to me that even in the same conference, I didn't get it.
So it was just one instant. So we had Midnight Madness with the ladies, and I warned the players, like, guys, this is not Midnight Madness. This is going to be practice. We're going to there's going to be breakdowns. So there's no dunk contest, no 3-point contest. We're practicing because we split the floor. We're at one end, the ladies were at the other end. Well, of course, they were doing a regular Midnight Madness. No, we're out there, we're doing four corners, we're doing zigzag. Well, Bob Byer, one of our assistants, who's now at the Lakers, we're out there, and I warned him. I was like, I kept warning him. So we go out, and Coach wouldn't come out for about 5 or 10 minutes. And when he comes out, Andre's just jacking around like it's Midnight Madness. Coach gets in his ass, man. I mean, it was one of the all times. Andre freaks out, runs back to the locker room crying. So Bob Byer goes, gets them, and they're not back for it's like 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, Andre comes running out. And I'm like, Bob, what? He was like, Pat, I just sat him down. I was like, look, you were warned. This is how it is with Coach. There's no BS. We're practicing tonight. It's this way all the time. And I don't know. It clicked right then. After that, never a problem. Wow. Never. I mean, it was wild. It just took that one instance, that one ass chewing, as they say, and he bought in. Never, honest God, we never had. Now, he won the greatest defensive player. That frustrated us, but we try to overlook that because he was so powerful on the offensive end.
His offense was better than his problems.
And he graduated early.
Oh.
Which was no problems with class, great grades. I mean, it's more Andre, I think, trying to portray himself to kind of be, I wouldn't say not a mean guy or whatever, but try to act like a tough guy sometimes, when he was actually one of the greatest human beings you could ever meet. Like, he'd be wearing, his sleeves torn off, and then he didn't have any tattoos his first year. Nothing wrong. I mean, I got a tattoo, but back then no one had them. Yeah. And all of a sudden, he's got 100 of them in 1 year. So it's almost like he had two identities. Like, he's trying to portray, hey, I'm a tough guy, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about school. I don't care. And I used to tell him, I was like, Andre, come on, man. Why do you act this way? You never miss class. You got good grades. Oh, come on, coach, man. It's my image. He was just a sweetheart. It's unbelievable. And when I tell people that, because if you just saw the outside in, oh man, he wasn't coach's type of kid. Nah, it took that, honest God, that one time at Midnight Madness, Bob Byer sat down with them. And after that, unbelievable. And then the one year, his junior year, he was thinking about going pro. And so his mom and aunt came and sat with us. And, what do you think? And, coach was honest, like, look, I think you'll probably a second round pick just because you play out of position. That's how the NBA. But if you want to go, fine. I'll help you. I'll help you find a good agent. But then they asked, well, if he doesn't make it, can he come back? And, coach is like, if we have the scholarship, but I can't promise you the scholarship's going to be here. That didn't go over really well, but then had the conversation like, look, we have to protect ourselves, but I'll help you either way. But then Andre made a great decision, came back, had another, first team all Big 12, led the Big 12 in scoring. But my dad was right. Just playing power forward as 6'4", it just didn't translate, but he made a great living overseas, and playing in the Big Three and stuff. But great. I mean, honest God, one of my all-time favorite person. And then what was great, when these guys learn about coach, it's just like, water on a duck, it just flies off. Now, coach used him because no one realized this. Coach really changed from a standpoint. He realized, like, when I played, you could yell at all of us. We all could take an ass to him. But now as you get, society changes, kids are getting softer, we'd actually have meetings like, okay, who can we get on, who can we not? And so we'd actually kind of go overboard on the ones we could, like say, like we knew we couldn't get on you. So coach, all right, we're not getting on Matt tonight, but we're going to get on Pat. And we'd actually warn guys like, hey, look, it's not going to be you, but if, Matt screws up, we're going to yell at you instead. Andre became one of those guys. We would yell at him because we knew we couldn't yell at so-and-so. And Andre loved it after that. But it was wild. I've never seen it change. It usually takes a year or so. And I was like, oh, boy, when he ran in the locker room, he was balling. Didn't know what to do.
Not a good sign.
Runs off the court. And after that, the kid bought in. And
Wow.
so he's was one of my, my dad's favorites, probably just the whole situation. Like, don't know if it's going to work. We watch the tape. The kid can't shoot. They're playing him at two guard. And then all of a sudden, we got him in our motion offense. We keep him around the bucket. We're like, oh my God, this is the most
Yeah.
explosive scorer we've had around the bucket. So he's one of those great stories. And it's just a tragedy what happened to him. His life got taken from him. Because, I mean, he would have been, he's always one of those kids hear from periodically and everything, would check in and yeah, it's a loss for all of us. But
Yeah.
honestly, looking on the outside in, people are like, how'd that work? But it did, man. And they end up being one of the, when I tell people, no way, he was one of the guys coach, I'm like, yeah. I was like, the guy ended up loving being chewed out. It's after that first time. So whatever happened, it clicked, and not the poor kid, but the kid bought in.
Yeah. Coach, thank you for telling those details,
Yeah,
because
so
it's
I kind of get on
something.
a rant.
No, it's
And
something for 22 years I've been wondering about. And because, again, knew him in high school, and you're right, like, he was so likable, charismatic, and so we were good. But then I just knew he wasn't doing well his freshman year, and then the switch. But then also, like, who it was with. From the outside, I always believed this about you and your dad, is that outsiders didn't know. Like, we really didn't know what it was like to be on the team, coached by you, the day to day. You hear about that like the butt chewings and stuff, but that kind of happens everywhere. But what you don't hear, like, even the way that Ronald Ross talked about his experience, he loved it, and it was life changing. But again, I love getting to hear that about how it worked with him. I love the story of Midnight Madness,
oh,
but yeah.
and for me was wild working for my dad. It's like Wizard of Oz. I got to go behind the curtains. A lot of his madness is planned. And it was wild because we did the good cop, bad cop. He had a rule. You could go off on a team 3 times. And by going off, like, throw the water cooler, kick them out of practice. But 3 times was it, because you lose your effect. And we had one bad year, there's one losing season. And we used all 3 in the pre-conference. We were below 500, and now we're going to start the conference. So he has a meeting with us. He's like, all right, guys, we're done. We're, like, what do you mean, coach? He's like, we can't get on them anymore. He's like, wow, you can go off 3 times, and then you lose interest. And he's like, so now we just got to coach them up. He's like, we're about to start the Big 12. It's not going to be pretty. But if we coach these guys up, we go out, find a really good junior college guard, I guarantee we'll be in the tournament next year. So he was like, now we got to police ourselves, because the great thing worked for him as assistant, you coached. When it was your scout, you coached. You went through the plays, everything. You're allowed to get on the players, yell at the players. I mean, he got on us for not talking enough at practice.
Wow.
But so he was like, now, guys, we got to police each other. So if you see me starting to go off, stop me. If I see, so it'd be great. And so I could always tell at halftime, if he started jogging, the players were going to get an ass chewing. There must have been 3 or 4 times during that Big 12 season. I'd run up and grab him. What? Damn, we used up all 3. Oh, shit. All right, let me compose myself. And he would wait outside for a minute. Then he'd go in. And then same thing with me. I'd start, Pat. Okay. Honest God. So we did that. Didn't go off. I mean, we got beat. It was a bad year. Got assigned to junior college, good guard. We were in the NCAA tournament the next year. And so then I started thinking, I'm like, when I played, I'm like, yeah, he never overstepped the 3 going off rule. And so I'm calling the teammates, like, hey, you remember that time? I was like, that was planned. I was like, I'm learning all this stuff. And I mean, it was amazing just learning the stuff. And he was like an expert on just motivating and trying to get the most out of the kids. But the best was, and I told this a couple years ago. I did this interview with a buddy of mine's daughter, Jeff Goodman, and because no one had really hears any of these stories.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those guys that's going to write a book. I just like doing, hey, they're good stories on podcasts. We're having a beer at a bar. And so we're at Tech, and we got these freshmen, and it's like his second to last year. We're pretty good, but the freshmen are driving them nuts. So he's like, all right, we're in the locker room, and he's like, all right, let's call some managers in. He's like, all right, guys, I need two cakes. I want one vanilla cake, one chocolate cake, and I want a couple of gallons of vanilla and chocolate ice cream. And he reaches back, gives the managers a bunch of money. They go to the store. They come back, and so now, we're supposed to have practice. It's Sunday. We're going to have practice, and we just gotten beat a couple games. And so now we go out, and coach is like, hey, go get a couple of the long tables, set the ice cream and cake out there. And so we have no idea what's going on. So he's like, all right, let's go. So we go out there. He's like, all right, you guys, let me get this set up. So coach is behind the two different cakes, the two different ice creams. He's got a knife, and he's got in one hand an ice cream scoop in the other. He's like, go get the players. I'm like, all right. So we go get the players, bring them out, and they come out, ready for it. They start to get in our four corners passage. All of a sudden they look, no, guys, come over here. Hey, I want to apologize. I've been too hard on you guys. We practice too much. I just want you guys to have a good time. He's like, come on, grab a plate. Get in here. He makes the guys line up. So they grab a plate. He's cutting the cake, putting it on their plate, and he's like, you want vanilla or chocolate? Oh, why don't you have both? He serves the whole team cake and ice cream. Now they're standing there out on the court like, they don't know what. Oh, eat up, guys. We're here to have fun. So he's like, all right, boys, let's go. So we go back to the locker room. He starts getting dressed. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? He's like, the Cowboys are playing this afternoon. I'm going home. He's like, let's go. And I'm like, really? He's like, let's go. We get dressed. We go home. We just leave the team out there with ice cream and cake. So I tell one of the managers, I'm like, hey, call me and let me know what happens. And so a couple hours go by, manager calls me. He's like, hey, coach. I was like, what happened? He's like, they end up having practice on their own. I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. So I called my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad. He was like, yeah, they practice on their own. I'm like, what? I was like, yeah, okay. That's what I was hoping. See you tomorrow. We had it all planned. We ended up winning the next game and ended up going to the tournament. It was just all this play. It was wild. We had no idea, but it was cool for me that I actually got to go behind the curtain and just see all the motivational techniques and he would really just sit there and we'd talk about players or personality. And, Phil Jackson was the mastermind at it, but my dad actually had a lot of Phil Jackson in him but no one wants to believe that because you just see the stuff on ESPN and everything. But a lot of it, no, some of it wasn't. Some of it was just pure anger at times. But but the majority of it, though, it was amazing. We'd spent a lot of time playing on motivation. He'd be like, hey, you go in there, you'll be the bad cop. You just go off, and then I'll come in and calm things down. It was amazing, all the stuff. And it was great when I started seeing my old teammates telling them the stories. They'd be like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, yeah. And he's like, he did that to me, but it always worked. So it's kind of neat just seeing that part of him. And he never got enough credit from a standpoint of, he always got the credit because he's great X's and O's, but he's also great dealing with personalities and just dealing with kids.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.